Do you want to learn how to build an ASP.NET Core Web API from scratch? In this video, we'll learn step by step and create a brand new Web API using .NET 6. And we'll also use Entity Framework Core to first create our Web API using SQL Server database. I recommend please watch this video till the end so that you don't miss any single detail in between. And after watching this video, if you like this video, so please hit the like button and please comment with a heart emoji. And if you haven't subscribed my channel, I request please subscribe my channel so that you don't miss my next upload. So without any further delay, let's start to create our web API using .NET Core. So I have created a folder to create my project. So you can also create your project folder in your computer, and I'm using Visual Studio 2022. So here let's create a new project. So from here we'll choose ASP.NET Core Web API. So if you want, you can search from this template. Also, if you have created already a .NET Core Web API project, so you can see a direct link over here. As you can see here, ASP.NET Core Web API. So click on it and click on next. Let's copy this location, and here it is asking our project name. So let me give Web API demo, and you can change the location and click on next. So here you can see we are using .NET 6.0, that is the current version. And let me uncheck this, that configure to HTTPS. If you want, you can keep it same, but let me uncheck this, and let's keep everything as same and then create on. So now it will take some time to create our brand new web API project. So once this progress is complete, then we'll see the file and folder structure and what is the default controller is there and other supporting files. So you can see our project is ready, and this is the default page. As you can see, uh, these are some default snippet, and if you open your solution explorer here, so we have our connected services, we have dependencies, we have a property folder. Here we have our launch settings.json, and we have a controller folder, and inside this there is a default folder. Let's open it. So here we have a default get API, and to support this controller we have a class, or you can say the model, weather forecast.cs, and here we have some properties. Along with this we have app settings.json. Here we can keep our configuration settings, and we also have a program.cs file. This is the starting point of our application, and you can see there are some services like this which are already injected to it, and then we are also building our services like builder.build. Then we have our use authorization, map controllers, and finally we are running our application. So now let's try to run this application and see what is the default behavior of a newly created ASP.NET Core Web API project. So now we'll see a Swagger UI, and on that Swagger UI we'll see the default weather forecast controller. This is the Swagger UI, and we can see there is a single get API, and if you open it, so click on this try it out button and now click on execute. So here is the complete response. All right, and from where this response is coming, let's go back to Visual Studio and in the weather forecast controller. So this is the API which is returning this complete array of object. So date, temperature C, temperature F, and summary. And these are the properties of our this weather forecast class. All right. So, and another thing is, if you see this Swagger UI URL, so this is your base URL. All right. Again, if you see here, this is your base URL. In all your APIs, this much part will be the same. Rest we can change as per the APIs. All right. So let's close it. So now the first thing, let's create a new folder here. So right click, add a folder, and give it a name as models. So here we'll create our classes, also the supported classes. So let's create a new item, and let's give it a name. Let's say employee. And for this employee class, let's create some properties. So the first property should be, just to create a property, you simply type prop and then hit your tab key. So it will create a property. So here you can change the data type, but the first property should be your ID. And let's create another. So prop, and then change your data type. And here let's give it a name, first name. And similarly, not route options, prop, string, last name, and let's create another one. So prop, string, let's say mobile number. So these are four properties, and let's save this. And also in the models folder, let's create another file and give it a name, db context. So db context is the file which will communicate with our database, and it will post the data. Means it will insert the data in the database, as well as it will fetch the database and give it as a response. All right, so right click on your model and add, create new item. But before that, we have to uh, install some packages. So right click on your project, so go to manage NuGet packages, and here in the browse, first of all let's type entity framework. So we'll see this Microsoft.entityframework.core, and the latest version is 8.0.0, but we have to go and search 6.0.0 as our project based on .NET 6. So this is the version of 6.0.0. So click on install. So this will install this Microsoft.entity framework core package, and after that, I think this is installed. Yes. So another package is entity framework core.design. So again, go and select the appropriate version. So 6.0.0, click on install. I accept. So this will install our entity framework core.design. And after that, we also need to install one more package that is called entity framework core.sql server. Again, go and choose the appropriate version at 6.0.0, click on install. I accept. And the last package is Microsoft Entity Framework Core.tools. Again 6.0.0, install. I accept. So these are the four packages which we need to install in order to use Entity Framework Core and other properties of Entity Framework. So now if you can verify, go to the installed tab, close it. So you can see we have all the four packages, and this is the default Swagger tools package. So close it. Now again in the models folder, go click on add new item. If you want, you can create a separate folder to create a DB context, but I'm using the same models folder. So click on class and let's give it a name. Let's say employee DB context. Make sure you will give the appropriate naming convention, so that uh, other than you, if anybody will work on your project, so he will get to know directly by viewing the name. And this employee DB class will inherit our DB context class, and this will come from our package, not this one. So simply control dot. So we have to import this entity framework core package, And now we have to create a constructor of this particular class. So there are two ways to create a constructor. Simply type ctor, so it will create a constructor. Let me show you. If you hit enter, so this is the constructor, and we have to pass some parameters. Now the other way, click on this employee db context and simply type control dot, and now we can use this one, generate constructor with this options. Double click on it. So it is using db context options as an parameter, and this options, which is the object of this class, is passing back to the base class. All right, so the constructor is done. Now we have to create our db set of other models. So based on that, it will the tables in the database will get created. If you see, the Visual Studio IntelliSense is showing the direct this IntelliSense, like we are going to create the DB set, means we are going to create this DB set, and based on that, this employees table will be created in the database. So simply hit tab. So we are done. So simply save this. So this is our employee DB context. Let's say if you want to create any other model or any other class on based on that, you want to create the table in the database. So you simply create here and create a DB set over here. All right. So that is very simple. Now let's go to our app settings.json, because here we have to specify our connection string so that it will get the SQL connection and it will create the database. So here connection string, and inside that we have to give our name. So let's say dbcon, or let's say dbcs, and here we have to pass some properties. So the first property is data source. Data source is nothing but your SQL server name. So go to your SQL server, click on connect database engine, and you can copy. In your case it would be a different name. So that is one. The second one is database or initial catalog. So initial catalog, and that will be your database. So what database you want to create? So let me give here name employee web API demo. And finally, if you see here, I'm using authentication as Windows authentication, so no need to provide username and password. All right, if you are using it as SQL Server authentication, then you have to pass login and password. So in this SQL Server authentication, you have to provide username, user ID and password. But if you are using Windows authentication, then you simply need to give integrated security true. That's it. Save. So our connection string is ready. Now we have to inject our DB context, which we just created here in our program.cs. All right, so that whenever we try to access our classes, or when we try our CRUD operations, all right, so that it will be it will use our database using DB context and perform all data operations like post, get, delete. All right, so here after this Swagger service, let's add our DB context. So builder dot services, builder dot services dot add DB context, and here we have to give our context name. In our case, this is employee DB context, this one. All right, so employee DB context, and it will add our namespace because this class is in this models folder. And after that, let's create a object as options, and now this options will use our SQL server. So options dot use SQL server, and inside this we have to pass our database connection name. So this one, so how to get it? So inside this use SQL server, we have to give builder builder dot configuration dot get connection string, configuration dot get connection string, and inside here we have to pass our connection name, which is, go to app settings, this one. So pass it here. So save. So we have injected our employee DB context in our program.cs, because this program.cs is the starting point of our application. All right. So simply save. Let's try to build this just to check if there is any error or exception. I hope there will be no error or exception. It will build succeeded. Perfect. Now in our controller, let's try to add one controller. So click add controller, and from the template we have to select API and API controller empty. Click on add. So as our model name suggests, we are creating this controller for employee. So give it a name as employee controller, employee. So this is the default employee content when you create a new control web API controller. So here, first of all, like we are using our DB context just to communicate with the database. So we have to create our database context, all right, or we have to consume database context. So how we can do that? Private read only employee DB context and create an object, and now create a constructor of this controller. So CTOR, hit tab, it will create the constructor, and let's use the same employee context as a parameter. If you see, you just click here, it is Visual Studio is very smart, so it is showing like what you are going to do. I'm going to do exactly same as the IntelliSense is showing. So simply hit tab. Perfect. So we have injected our employee DB context in the constructor also. So now this employee DB context will be available to this particular controller class. So after here, save. So let's create a get method or get API. So again, due to this IntelliSense, it is showing like you will be going to you are going to create a HTTP get API. So hit tab as get, and now let's create public action result get employees, or simply use get, and here return employee DB context dot employees dot to list. Save. Return OK, because we are using I action result. If you see, the data return type is I action result, so we can simply wrap this inside this OK. So now it's time to run our migration and create a database based on this DB context and app settings. All right, so to do so, go to the tools and you get package manager console. So here, if you notice, in our solution explorer we don't have any migration folder. All right, so once we run our migration, we'll see a migration folder over here. So simply type a command add migration and give it a name initial, hit enter. So based on our DB context and the models, whatever we are using in our DB context, so it will create a script, and like to create a database script, you can say the same kind of commands like we use to create database and table in SQL. If you see this some based on some date, underscore initial.cs. This is the file. If you see migration builder dot create table, all right. If you see, so it will create a employees table, all right, in our database. Again, go back to package manager console. Now give another command, update database. So now what it will do, it will take this migration class, and based on the script it will create and execute these commands in the database. So you can see the status is done and it has executed this much commands. Okay, now it's time to go to SQL Server and verify if this database is created or not. All right, go to SQL Server and right click on this databases and refresh. So the database name is employee web API demo. So has been refreshed and employee web API demo. Okay, expand this one. And in the tables, we'll see two tables. Perfect. One is migration history. Another one is DBA employees. Again, expand this one, expand columns. So we have ID, which is primary key, first name, last name, and mobile number. Perfect. So we have our database ready. Perfect. Now let's go back to Visual Studio, and in the employees controller we have created one get API, and now time to run to this project and see if this get API is working and returning some blank object or blank list, because as of now we don't have any employee data. If you see here, let me change this to employee employee web API demo, and select star from employees. If you hit this command, so there is no record. All right, so now again if you come here and try it out, execute, so it will give us a blank list, a blank array. You can see the response body. So this is working. And if you consider this one, this is your base URL, and again this is your endpoint like API employee. All right, let's close this one. Now again go back to your Visual Studio. Now let's create another post API. All right, so the HTTP verb should be HTTP post, and after that public I action result post, and here in this post we will accept this employee.cs. But the thing is, from the UI or from your front end, whether it is React or whether it is your web API or whether it is your Angular, we don't need this ID. All right, so just to support this, let's create another supporting file for this employee. So here we'll add another class. So class, let's give it a name, employee UI model, and in this let's save all, go to employee, and let's copy these three only and paste it over here, save. And now you have to go to employee controller, and here we have to use this employee UI model, and here if you want you can apply some validation. Let's say if employee model equal null, then return bad request. Again, if that is not null, and if employee model dot first name equal blank, or employee UI model dot last name equal blank, means these two should be mandatory filled. Again, bad request. Else, now we have to create our class. So where employee equal new employee, and here first name is equal to employee UI dot first name, last name equal employee model dot last name, and finally mobile number equal employee UI model dot mobile number. Now we have our employee with the details whatever we pass from our UI or from our front end. So now time to pass this employee object to our DB context. So employee DB context dot employees dot add, simply pass this employee object, and finally employee DB context dot save changes, save, and finally return OK employee, save. So our post API is ready. Now let's run this project and see if we are able to create a new employee using this post API or post method. And later on we'll also see this get API. So that get API should return a newly added employees. So we can see two APIs over here. So click on post, try it out. So you can see based on our UI model there is no ID. All right, so let me give my name, click on execute. So now it is executing the data or processing our data and adding to our database. So command call is executed successfully, and in the response you can see we have got a newly added employee. So ID, first name, last name, mobile number. Okay, let's quickly check it from the SQL also. So select this command, click on execute. So we are a new record in our table. All right, again also try to execute this get API, try it out, execute. So this will also return a single object. Perfect. Now let's also add another employee. So let's say Virat Kohli, and let's say mobile number is something something. Click on execute. Perfect. We have another object, and if you again hit this get API, so now in the list we'll see two records. Perfect. So both the APIs are working. Now close it, and let's also execute this command. Now we'll see two records. Perfect. Now in the employees controller, let's try to create another get API. So that API will return an employee based on the ID whatever we will pass from the UI. All right, so here again, or after this, let's create http get and public iaction result get, and here in the parameter it will ask int ID. All right, or if you want you can pass employee ID. All right, so this is upon you here. So we will see, first we'll find the employee based on this ID in our database. So how we can find that? So where employee equal, if you see again in this Visual Studio is so smart, but this time I'll use it. So employee DB context dot employees DB context dot employees dot where, and here we use lambda expression. So x dot id equal id dot first or default. All right, save. Now if maybe this id is correct or not, so based on this id maybe we will get an employee or maybe we'll get an null response. So if employee is equal null, then we'll return no content, means there is no information in the database. Else will return okay and employee. Save. Let's save this. So http get here, let's give a route get by id. Let's save this and now let's run it. So now we have three APIs. So let's click on this get by ID, and if you try it out, so we have to pass any ID. If you see here in the database, we have two records. So let's say if I pass ID1, execute. So this will return the first record with the ID1, like this one. Perfect. We have one object containing all the details for ID1, and if I give ID2, so this will return object of 2. And let's say if I give any random ID which does not exist in the database, so for that it says no response. All right, so again let's go back to a Visual Studio. So all three APIs are working. Now the next API we have to create for updating our record. So if you see, let's say if you want to update, let's say first name, last name, or even the mobile number based on this ID. So for that, let's create a update API, and for that, that HTTP verb should be HTTP put public action result put, and this will take our employee object, because here we will also pass ID from the front end. So here based on this employee, so employee db context dot entry and employee employee dot state is equal to modify state dot modified, and employee db context dot save changes. Save, and finally return okay. Save. Run the project, and now we'll try to update any existing record. So let's say this record with the ID1. So let's go to this put API, try it out. ID1 test user mobile number 12345, execute. So these values will be updated to our database. You can see 200 means success. Go back to SQL Server. If you execute this one, our details has been changed. So our update API is also working. Perfect. Let's close it and go back to Visual Studio. So our last API, which is delete API. So here HTTP delete and public iAction result, delete, and this will take ID. So here employee DB context dot remove dot employees dot remove, and in this remove we have to pass our employee object. All right, so first of all, similar to this, let's copy this one and paste it here. So first, based on this ID, we will fetch the employee. If employee exists, then we have to pass this employee over here in the remove, and employee DB context dot save changes, and finally return OK. Save. So our delete API is also ready. So delete post put get. Click on start button. So now we'll perform all 5 operations: add, delete, update, get by ID. So let's go to this delete one first, and it takes one ID. So if I give ID 1, which is a valid ID because we have a record with this ID 1, execute. So hopefully it will give that 200 OK success response. As it gave success, let's go to SQL and execute this command. So we have a single record with this 2. Again, if you see, if you try to get this list, so now this time this will only give 1. Now go back to this post. Let me give another record. So Rohit Sharma, this number, execute. So we have added this one, and if you again execute our get API, we'll get the third record also, and in the SQL we'll have 3 records. Perfect. So this is how you can create your ASP.NET Core Web API project. So as of now, I have created these APIs, but this is the first part of this API video. In the next part, I will create a React.js project, and in that project, I'll consume these APIs to make this video as a full stack video. All right. So if you have any query or concern related to this video, so please comment in the comment box. I'll try to help you. I'll try to answer you. And let's say if you're working for a company, or you are doing an internship, or you are working on your college project, and you are having any kind of technical issues or problems, then you can contact me on my contact details. You can find my contact details like WhatsApp number, Instagram ID, and LinkedIn ID in my channel description. So go to my channel and you'll find all these details, and we can connect like on Google Meet or Zoom. All right, and we can help each other. So this is about today's video. In our next part, as I mentioned, I'll create a React.js video where I'll consume all these APIs, including like login and registration, and we'll complete this series. This is the part 1 and the part 2 as a full stack project. All right. So till then, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.